Ooh, ooh, ooh. WDBFradio.com. WDBFradio.com.
In the post that I put up soliciting questions about what your experience was when you were applying. If you can help us out, we probably will send you a prize, 888-575-4394. What I am looking for in terms of a way to improve the site has to do at the very beginning with the application phase. If you get your application on a phone, you're going to get the possibility of not seeing all the questions. If you get it on your laptop, you usually see all the questions. So, what I am trying to figure out, based on the way people apply and what they say or don't say in their application, can mean acceptance or non acceptance into the group. So I know that there's a lot of people that see it on their phone that would normally answer the questions, but they don't. And there is, but they aren't able to. It's not that they don't, they're not able to because the questions don't come up. So, as an administrator who's looked at 51,000 out of the 56,000 applications, when I took over the group, there were about 5,000 people in it. Um, we see a lot of times where everything about them, the number of groups they belong to, the number of friends, how long they joined Facebook, how long ago they joined Facebook, and all that. And then we can go into their own profiles, but that's highly time consuming. So when we don't get answers to the questions, especially if you don't agree to follow the rules and regulations, it's almost an automatic deletion. I am trying to bring people into the group that want to be there, but we don't want people in that are obviously frauds or scammers. So if anybody has any input on what their experience was, we will give you a prize if you give us a call. 888-575-4394 is the number. And for those of you who are listening for the first time, we replay this show if you want to recommend it to friends and family. And I always say, if you are at a Saturday get together with family, especially if it's Saturday afternoon between 4 and 6, and when you tell people what you do, I sell rare books. Most people, yeah, I know it's a noisy motorboat going by. Um, if you are at a family get together, most people, your friends don't even understand what you do as a rare bookie. So, we put family in the same group. What I always say is if it's a Saturday afternoon and you're at a get together and it's between 10 and 12, or Saturday afternoon between 4 and 6, or Sunday 8 to 10 and 3 to 5 p.m., or Monday 1 to 3 a.m. You're not going to play it then. But let people know what you do. And what better way than to hear this program talking about what you do? So that's up to you all, but now you all know when the show is replayed. It's been a very interesting and somewhat controversial week this week in the worlds, the multifaceted worlds that we collect, shop, buy, fondle, all those things like that. So the following is a recap of those events during the last week and an announcement. I'm not sure when, but in the next 2 weeks, I am planning two things. One is I want to do a seminar again, the ABC seminar on how to identify and sell collectible books, because when they changed everything on Facebook, they took down the original video that I had. So we will do another one. And I haven't done a seminar in a while, so I also say it keeps me sharp. Um, the other thing is we're going to try one more time in the next 10 days, 2 weeks, so there's enough lead time to do what would be auction number 7. And we'll tell you more about that as it develops. But let's talk about some of the things that have been going on in the auction world. Some of them are standard, some of them actually are very interesting. Heritage December 15th is going to have an auction of fine books. First edition of the Time Machine is there. There's another auction they have coming up that's going to have military arms and armor. I always tell you, and if you're new and haven't heard it before, that old rifle, that rusty shotgun barrel or, assembly, an old sword that's been sitting on the family mantle for decades, if not a century or more. Some of those things can really be worth a lot of money if you take a few minutes to look at them and see who manufactured, who made the sword, who made the firearm. Like Tiffany is the jewelry, Krieghoff is a name to firearms that would equal Tiffany in jewelry for sure. So if you see some of those names there, you just might have a treasure. If you're interested in photography, copy down this address. It's in a website, iPhotoCentral.com, iPhotoCentral.com. Anything and everything you really want to know about modern photography, um, from A to Z, history to current prices, what's hot, what's not. Alex Novak has a phenomenal site, iPhoto Central Photography. For those of you who heard about the jewelry theft, who didn't, I'll give you a comparable. There was a royal blue cashmere. It's called the royal blue cashmere sapphire necklace that recently sold for $16,191,882. So, interesting. If you're into fancy jewelry, drool over it. I do. Space exploration. Well, there's another heritage auction coming up. They used to be, if you think about this, in the early years of our space flights and things, if it flew in space, it was really rare, especially if it came back and was on the auction block. But now there's a lot of stuff, a lot more stuff is coming out, but it's still the same story. If it flew in space and it found its way to an auction company or an auction block right now, it's going to be expensive. Um, Over the years, one of my fun favorite guest authors was John D. Moore. And when I saw this article, I thought of the audience and John right away. We all know who Jacques Kerouac is, or I presume you do. And like any other author, there's pieces of manuscript and letters and things like that that get lost in time. Well, this one is really an interesting story. How did a Jacques Kerouac manuscript wind up in the estate of Paul Castellano, the guy that Gotti bumped off? Okay, it's a very interesting story. It's this the story was purchased by a museum from the Castellano estate, and they instantly turned around and sold it for $8,500. But how did Castellano get it? No, nobody really knows for sure, but there's a great story about it with much more detail than I'm giving you in rarebookhub.com. Go to rarebookhub.com and subscribe to their free newsletter. And just in case you're new, I will tell you that rarebookhub.com is a site that you go to if you pay for it. It's a subscription site. The newsletter is free, but the subscription site is a monthly subscription. But it's a required subscription for serious book dealers, and it's also a required subscription even if you're a one-timer, but your situation reads like this. you inherited a bunch of really nice looking old leather bound or cloth bound books with maps, charts, plates, all of the things like that. And you don't know what they're worth and you want to find out. Well, what you would want to do is take a short term subscription to rarebookhub.com and look them up, because if you get your prices from dealer comparative listings, you're not always on the money. You're not always on the money anyway, but I'd rather get my reference material from an actual auction price than a price that somebody asked for that we don't know if it's sold or not. This broke my heart when I read this story. The Berkshire Community Library lost 40,000 books destroyed by a leaking ceiling. I'll tell you two stories about leaking ceilings. Both of them are personal. I'm going to tell you the short one first, because if the longer one had ever come to the punchline of this story, I would not be sitting here talking to you for the last 11 years as a rare book dealer. First story. I had a store, for those of you who know Miami Beach. It was 515K or 513K Lincoln Road. It was in the courtyard of the Lincoln Hotel that's on Lincoln Road. Back in those days, which was the early 80s, it was a more residential hotel than a tourist hotel. The older people in Miami Beach was still around. Some guy fell asleep in the room above where my store was. At that time, I actually had three stores going on. Um, and fell asleep with the bathtub on. I was at the Marco Polo Hotel where my other store was, and the backstage phone lit up. Backstage phones don't ring if you're in the business, they light up. When that backstage phone lights up, it's never good, especially if I'm the one that was there, to answer it, because at the time, besides being the entertainment director, I was also the manager of the hotel. Hi, Steve. This is so and so, Mr. Abel, whatever his name was. There's been a flood at your store. You better come down and take a look at it. Ouch. Well, it was a complete loss, but there weren't a ton of books in there. I was just starting to set it up. But the other story, guys, this one, I couldn't make it up if I tried. It's 1983. Again, it's the Marco Polo Hotel. I did the first annual antiquarian book fair in Florida. I in South Florida. I am not sure if I preceded the FABA fair or we were both within the same time zone that year. But we did an antiquarian book fair at the Marco Polo Hotel. We had Amaretto di Serrano as a sponsor, Eastern Airlines. I'll tell you the most interesting part, well, the most interesting financial part of this book fair, 1983. Think about shows you were doing, booth fees, hotels, things like that. You had to get to the show yourself. But for $250, you got Friday and Saturday night in the hotel, meals, and we wound up, because it was sponsored by Amaretto, we gave almost every exhibitor a bottle of Amaretto. So the fair went on. It was decent for a first fair. I think we had about 18 exhibitors, which wasn't bad, for the area. It was pretty much so a local show. Everybody packs up. The room is empty. I, of course, I'm the last one out of the room. Lock the door of the compass room at the Marco Polo Hotel. I think I was driving a yellow Camaro at the time. Jump into the car, drive home, pat myself on the back for a fair well done. Nobody, lost anything. Nothing happened. All of that. Okay. Monday morning, I get up. And, usually I would get to the hotel earlier, but I got there later that day. Everybody knew I'd be in late. What's the first thing I do? I walk upstairs, I go into the lobby, walk upstairs to the compass room, and there's an army of workers in there. Just kind of dumbfounded. What happened? Why is everybody? I left the room clean. So I'm walking into the room, one step, two steps, three, four steps. And I'm realizing that I'm not walking on carpet. I'm walking on sop, as in saturated carpet. And I look up and I realize what's going on. The roof of the compass room at about 10:30 that night. Miami Beach can get some really strong wind gusts and, heavy blows and things like that. Well, the bottom line is the roof of the compass room collapsed and the whole room got saturated. That was 1983. Had I been responsible for that, even 50 years later today, nobody would talk to me in the book business. So what can I tell you? My dad had a saying for me when I was a kid, son, and I'll quote him on it. You have the ability to step in shice and come out smelling like a rose. Don't abuse it. And I haven't, but I still have the ability, as some of you may know. So those were sopping wet stories, and I can't even remember what. Oh, yeah, I know what. The library being destroyed. All right, so there's another discussion. I don't know if there's enough time. We'll pick this one up in the next segment. What we're going to talk about is pop culture, Mickey Mantle, comic books of Superman, and all kinds of other things that are price fluxing and kind of making us scratch our heads about what is worth what and why, and more so, will it last? That's the key thing that a couple of people whose opinions I respect and whose other people respect their opinions too, because what I'm going to tell you is a combination of what I've read that they've published and my own interpretations and descriptions of it. We'll be back with all that and more after these commercials.
The Bookman Eisenstein.
Welcome back, my fellow rare bookians. Got questions? We have the answers. And in the spirit of Holloway. Hey, David, how you going? David just got on my mind. Hola, buddy. And in the spirit of holiday giving, if you call us with a good question, or any question actually related to the book world, we'll not only answer the question, but today we'll send you a prize. If you call up with a question, we'll give you some nice stocking stuffer, rare book swag type prizes. So, what were we talking about when we went to break? It's something that has been talked about quite a while, many times, and related to different items. But the central aspect of what it is today, what we're talking about now, is the Mickey Mantle cards, the $9 million Superman, some other things like that that have come up at auction lately. So what I am telling you about now, if you want to go, we're going to go into detail on it, but if you want the source article, it's in Rare Book Hub's recent newsletter under the articles section. I'm telling you, that RBH, rarebookhub.com, is just an amazing wealth of information. Whether you're subscribing to it or getting the free newsletter, you're learning. I mean, that's the bottom line. So, what they were talking about is the Mickey Mantle card. One guy sold a card 3 years ago for 7.2. mill. Then one went for 12, and he was annoyed. He should have sold it early or later, those kind of things. The Superman at $9 million. I remember we had several discussions on that, and I initially brought it up under the heading of, wow, this is number one at auction of millions of dollars. And, further way down the list is $1 million Shakespeare compared to, the $12 million or $9 million Superman. It just amazes me culturally, so to speak. But these pop icon things, pop culture things like the rookie card, Superman. The questions that were asked were, are these valid prices? Well, yes, they're valid because somebody paid for them. But I'll give you an example of something. In the 1930s, publishers, in the late 20s, early 30s, and such, did a lot of limited edition books. Okay. John Masefield was one of them. There's three or four other British authors with the first name John who all fit in that category. Publishers did limited editions of them. Back in the day when those limited editions were sold in cash equivalent today, they would go for $300 or $400 back then. Today, I had about 30 of those such limited edition books or more at a book fair a couple of years ago, and I was selling them for $10 each or six for 50. Okay, so it's Vogue. What's Vogue today might just be garbage tomorrow. So it's very speculative. I mean, the Mickey Mantle rookie card, nobody's going to lose, are they going to lose money on it down the road? Who knows what people are going to collect down the road? But, literature and everything else goes in and out of vogue. And the fact that I'm not the only one, a lot of people are discussing this. What is happening that Superman goes for 9 million and Shakespeare goes for 1 million? Well, it's pop culture. That's what it is. Is it going to last? Some people don't think so. And some of those people had pretty serious minds and knowledge about it. And then one of the words that was used in the article is really an interesting set of words. It was like an artificial price. Um, it was, more emotionally driven pricing than what it's really worth. And, those kind of gambles, if you can afford them, great. But what's going to happen with this stuff down the road? What they said was, if you have a Mickey Mantle, the exact wording, if you have a Mickey Mantle rookie card, let me get my notes to get it right, they would not necessarily sell it now. These markets seem to be in flux. It's amazing. It's just amazing. But what will the market yield down the road? I wish I could tell you. That's a question that everybody always asks us. What should I put away for the future? Well, it's hard to say. It might be hot now. We talk about things like The Hunt for Red October. You got three times more money for that book in 1990s than you can get for it today. So there's really no way to say that. There are people that buy toys. I'm sure everybody's heard a story like this. They have a budget. They spend $500, $700 a year and buy toys, keep them in the boxes, and see if anything takes off. You could do the same thing. People do that when an author's first book comes out. Hey, I like this one. I'm gonna, they buy it, and maybe they buy a few copies on spec. Who knows? You never know what makes this stuff hot and not, other than, your experience in the market. That's the most important thing is your knowledge. One of the things that I mentioned before was the word limited editions. So I'm going to mention something for new people, and maybe there are some people that have been doing this for a while that aren't fully aware of the story. But I know the term limited editions club should be in your vocabulary. So if you know what the limited editions club is, do you know the history of it? Do you know why it was started? For those of you who don't know what it is, I'm going to start out with a definition of the limited editions club. For those of you who know what it is but don't know how it started, we'll pick the story up from there. I think we should be able to do that this segment. Okay, the limited editions club is a publisher. They were publishing from, I want to say, the 1920s up to, I don't remember the date of the last one, my apologies, in the 80s, I think, maybe a little later than that. In the early years of the limited editions club, every book was numbered and limited to 1,500 copies. Copy number one, two, three, whatever, but the back number was always 1,500. Somewhere three-quarters of the way up, maybe a little earlier than that in their publishing history, they changed 1,500 to 2,000. So if you're a subscriber to the limited editions club, whatever they came out with that year, you got that number. Let's say you bought numbers 007. That would be nice to find out if anyone had 007. You bought 007, and every book in your library that you ever got from them, as long as you kept the subscription going forward, would be number 007 of 1,500 or 2,000. Okay. What are some of the other things that make the limited editions club more desirable? One, every one of them, if the author is living, is usually signed by the author and or the illustrator and or sometimes somebody involved with the typography or something like that. If you have something like the limited editions club early classic title, it's not going to be signed by the author because the author was dead for hundreds of years. But if, and not if, whoever illustrated it signed it. Now, most of the time, you're going to see either one or two signatures. There's hundreds of publications, but there's only about 10 of them that really bring in big money. And here's an example of one of their slightly different approaches. James Joyce wrote Ulysses. Matisse was commissioned to illustrate that Ulysses. So there were 1,500 copies of the book that were published that were signed by James Joyce. If you ever saw his signature, it's a really dainty signature, but very nice. Um, there were 100 copies that are signed by both Matisse and Joyce. That's probably the most desirable limited editions club book in the whole series. 6, 8 grand is not uncommon if it's in good condition. Probably number two in the series would be La Strada, and that's illustrated by Picasso. So thusly, that's signed by Picasso. There's a bunch of others in the top. It all depends if, the more well-known the illustrator and desirable the signature. So those are one or two of the top ones. Let me throw in Alice, signed by Alice Hargraves is another one. She was not a signer. The Edward Weston one, oh God, what was the title of that? It's eluding me right now, but it was signed by Edward Weston. And there's one or two others that are of high note. Um, Philip Duchesne years ago did complete catalogs of, the complete run of the limited editions club. If you ever find them, they make great reference material. Um, So if you walk into a house, the chances are if you see a limited editions club collection of books, you are going to see the same number in them. They also break down, and this is my opinion. I don't know if everybody will agree with this, but I think we're all in harmony on the theory. Numbers might vary a little. What is that? Most limited editions club books, the majority of them will sell anywhere with the slipcase and the newsletter and all that, $40 to $60, 60 to 120. There's a couple in the 100 to $200 or $300 range. Then when you start going above $300, 300 to 500, that's one grouping. 5 to 750, 1,000 or so is the other grouping. And then the few that are $1,000 or more. They all kind of run true to that. The more recognizable the artist and the author is, whoever the signature is, the better off you are, is terms of what you can sell them for. So, limited editions club, 1,500 or 2,000, all of them are individually numbered and they're either signed. I've had a couple that was signed by a topographer, an artist, and an author. They're slight variations, but pretty much so it's the way I described it. So why did limited editions club get formed? Well, it's 10:38. I'm going to come back to that when we come back from the break at 40. But let me fill you in on a related segue. Heritage Press. Whenever you see a Heritage Press book, you're going to see publication, copyright, R.H. Macy. Macy's department stores who started the limited editions club. My definition of what the Heritage Press books are, and they're nice looking books, and man, during the holiday seasons, they sell like crazy. The Heritage Press is a poor man's limited edition club version. They're not signed, but they are nicely made. Some of them are really nicely made. And something that a lot of people might not realize, the Heritage Press had one limited edition. In the back, it says this is one of 1,000 copies. Not a numbered limited edition. It's just a stated this is one of 1,000 copies. And that book is called Ink and Blood. It's by Arthur Six, who is a noted illustrator, and it's anti-Nazi, anti-Hitler cartoons. The guy was like a Rackham. I mean, just unbelievably phenomenal, a modern Rackham, so to speak. Intense illustrations. Anyway, we'll be back with why the Limited Editions Club was put together.
Now, here's Steve the Bookman Eisenstein.
Welcome back, book lovers. Got questions? Want to win a prize? All you got to do is call 888-575-4394. That's 888-575-4394. I've always been told that I am more a giver than a taker, and I'm not going to argue with that. Sometimes we are born with that schmuck gene in our in our systems, but I like it and I'm not complaining. So it's the season to be giving. Since we haven't had a contest winner in a while, we're going to give someone a prize for asking a good question. And we'll also answer your question. All you got to do is call 888-575-4394. One other thing, this is something, if you are listening to us now and you have a book business online, brick and mortar, about to start, give us a call. Tell the audience about your book business. We are replayed today from 4 to 6. We're replayed tomorrow from 8 to 10 a.m. and 3 to 5 p.m. We're replayed Monday from 1 to 3 a.m. And right after this show is over, we load the audio and the on camera recordings in the studio of this particular edition of Bucks on the Bookshelf. If you are listening to us on a replay device or time period, and you want to reach us, you can call us at 305-868-5515. But we're giving you a chance to publicize your business for nothing to the world. Give us a call. 888-575-4394. You know, when I get picked up by a conglomerate, we're going to start charging you for that. So while we're still earthly, so to speak, give us a call. 888-575-4394. Okay, so going back to what we started with, why did Macy's form the limited editions club? I know there's a lot of you out there that have written your own books, had them published, had success, not had success, whatever it might be. But that's the publishing world. So, Macy's had a bookstore in their department stores. Everybody, Macy's, famous New York department store, and does Macy's tell Gimbals, you know, all that other stuff. Macy's had a very successful bookstore and an antiquarian collectors section in their store. Excuse me 1 second. There we go. And so he would buy, you know, whatever, you know, editions were out for the reading public. He also had this collector's section. Now, the publishers, I don't know how it works today, but this is what they did then, and it pissed the crap out of him. Mr. Macy, you said to our salesman that you want 10 copies of the limited edition books that we put out. Okay. In order to get 10 copies of the limited edition books that we put out, you have to buy X number of whatever trade edition is out right now. So they might have forced them to buy 200, 300, whatever copies of the third printing, okay? Macy's finally said to the publishers, pick a set of words, okay? But basically, what he did was, in his mindset, he was saying, I'm going to make a better limited edition, a craftier, a more everything better limited edition than you, as the publishers, have done. And that's what he set out to do. And that's exactly what he did. If you look at some of the limited editions club books, you will see that, you know, there were types of binding, so certain binders. There were topography that might have been created. There were types of paper that might have been used. Artists, you know, different artists that they didn't use in the publisher's limited editions. He just made a much better artistic eye candy book than what they did, and thus formed the limited editions club. He got tired of the publishers telling him, you know, well, you got to do this to get that, and that's how it started. Now, that brings up another subject. The limited editions club would be considered what you would call a fine or better press private. What you as a beginner need to do is learn the names of the private presses. They go from A to Z. A Shendy is one, Derrydale is another, Koala is another. Kelmscott is another. And I'm not going to try and brain strain. There's a whole bunch more there. But I'm going to show you something. If you ever see them, this is part for the YouTube crowd and part for the listening audience. I'm holding up a book right now called American Book Prices Current. This one in particular is from 1984. The prices, forget about it. But forget about it. Anyway, but the topics, besides the alphabetical, listing of authors' last names and all that, they have the names of publishers. They also have things like specific sections on Bibles or Korans or manuscripts or autographs. If you look at it, you're going to find that maybe you'll see a copy at a library sale somewhere. For a buck or two, it's worth picking up and just getting a feel for the book. Although everything is online now, I'm sorry. You give somebody that's top speed on a computer 10 books to look up that doesn't know anything about books, and you give me 10 books that I don't need much to look up on, I'm pretty sure I would come to the conclusions on the 10 faster. But there's nothing like having the pages in your hand. And by the way, I show this, let's see, this is 1896. The American Book Price is current. Has been published since 1896. And what's really funny about this, the 1896 edition has a statement. Of this volume of ABC, only 600 copies were printed. Okay, so that's 1896. In 1890, what else do we got here? 1897, it was the same thing, 600 copies. Wait a minute. I think it started in 95 or 90. I don't think 96 is the first. But the old joke, this one was limited to one of 500 copies. So what is this year? 1899. 96, 97. 1899 was only 500. There's a joke in the trade. Why did the publisher only make 500 copies of a book? Or why did they only make like 327 or something? Because they didn't think they could sell the 328th. But at one time, and this is another thing about, excuse my French, excuse my burp, in and out of vogue. When I started building up a reference library, I had a goal, and obviously I achieved it. I wanted volume one, number one of American Book Prices Current up to the most recent volume. A couple of them in the 40s, I believe they're still in the warehouse. But I have a couple in dust jackets. So we built up this huge run. I mean, 100, maybe 100 volumes easily, 1896 to 96 for sure. And then the computers came out. I would scramp, whatever you call it, to get a copy every year. I mean, they were expensive. They were $125 back in those years for, the cheaper ones. If you were lucky, let's say it was 1990 and you paid $125 for that copy. Very rarely would you see a copy of it available from 1990 in 1992. But if you did see a copy of it, it's like 60, $75, something like that. So we thought for sure with that, a complete run of Bookman's Price Index and all kinds of other things that, our reference books would be part of our retirement fund. Well, did the computer ever kill that? I'll tell you, there's two special volumes in Bookman's Price Index that we did keep for fun. One of them was the special fiction guide. That's just fun. The other one that I kept is volume one, number one. And believe it or not, I still use that today. Rarely, but I do occasionally use it. Why? It's not for what's in the front of the book, the basic A to Z listing of, authors, titles, descriptions, and prices. What's in the back of that book is something that, if anybody knows something that's equal to that, that's out yearly, please call me. I'd love to know about it. But what it is reference and periodicals. So when you find some magazine, run, or a periodical run, you can look that up in that particular, you can look it up online now. But again, it's easier to look up in a book. And on the other end of it, some of these things that they listed then were really obscure then. So if they were obscure then, I don't know if they even got picked up by somebody, going over the book and trying to figure, oh, what am I doing? I forgot that keep eye straining for the clock, but I forgot the new clock is back up. Okay. So, that's an interesting volume. If you ever see that, it's huge. I mean, it's twice the size almost of your Webster's dictionary that would be the big desktop dictionary, which actually right now I'm looking at because my laptop is sitting on top of the dictionary. Anyway, so limited editions club, Heritage Press, those are things you want to know about. Fine presses you want to know about. Not every fine press book is going to be worth a fortune, but you really need to know, the names of them. And also, if you start learning the names, you get an idea that not every one of them is a $10,000 book. So, you are your knowledge, you are your vocabulary and all that other stuff in this field. 888-575-4394 is a number you can call in about 5 minutes after.
WDBFradio.com. WDBFradio.com. WDBFradio.com.